What's up, Barefoot Nation? This week, I am going to be talking about the polar vortex slash blizzard of 2022 here in Buffalo. Can you see how excited I am to talk about snow? Anyways, guys, let's go! Polar vortex 2022 here in Buffalo. Blizzards, or at least heavy snows, are not uncommon. You can see, you can't really see from here, but if you look right here, that second pile, you can just see the top, that's the sable. So, I mean, at least it's buffered from the wind. I'm inside right now because, like, you know, look at it out there. That's one of the perks to having bamboo, as you can see if it's going nuts, that it's super windy. So, yeah. Trying to use my wheelbarrow as wind protection, at least for the Akuba, which looks frozen solid. That's the crazy part too, is looking at the windows. Everywhere where there's a screen, it's totally covered in snow. I mean, you can see the layer of snow between the screen and the glass. So you can see there that that's the smaller needle palm that had a greenhouse over it. These whipping winds blew the greenhouses off, basically all of my palms that had them on, except for the one little needle palm way out there. And I'm glad that one's on still, because that one's in pretty wet soil, pretty wet. And then you can see here that that needle palm was too big to get one of these cold frames on, even that one. And then all of these cold frames against the house are in place because I piled a lot of mulch around them. I think my winter landscape is beautiful. Even, you know, not cutting things back in fall is definitely an asset. I mean, imagine if, I guess it's not polar vortex related, but imagine if the iris and the grass and all these perennials were cut back, it would not look nearly as pretty, in my opinion. So it's currently 14 degrees here in Buffalo, and I know that a lot of you guys, by the way, look at that snowdrift. Look at the shed right there. It's crazy, even for Buffalo. I know that a lot of you guys have had colder temperatures, but here in Western New York with the Great Lakes, Buffalo is sat between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And so that's gonna not only produce all this stuff, but it's also going to buffer the temperature a little bit. So the thing with the Buffalo winter is that, generally speaking, the winter will get cold and it'll stay cold basically up until, like, you know, really depends on the year, because that's kind of what climate change has been doing to this area, is making the winters really unpredictable. The other thing about the snow is you can see that little tree right there that was a beautiful bonfire peach, but because the snow will basically freeze, the rabbits have been able to get up really high, completely above the graft, and girdle it completely. You can see here that you can't even see out this window because there's a screen. So I guess kind of my question to y'all is, like, given this amount of snow, would you guys protect your palms with kind of the traditional methods, or do you think that this is sufficient? Well, this polar vortex, if you live in Buffalo, is definitely, I don't even know how to describe it. Well, I guess as far as the plants go, you can see the needle palm, one of the needle palms right there. Got some hardy bananas that are, like, not even exposed, and they left like 2 feet of stalk. In both cases, actually, there's one that's way out there. You can see that little tiny black dot of snow. That's the top of the eucalyptus tree, which is like 3 feet tall or more at this point. And then I have a sable palm underneath this giant snow dune too. So yeah, the bamboo, the one there, the spectabilis, looks like its leaves are curled because I transplanted it in December, so that's nothing unusual. Not really ever a great time to transplant bamboo, it seems like. But the Philostachys atravaginata, that I planted in the spring is perfectly fine. Looks like as green as it did in September. Just glad to get the Orinoco banana a little bit of sun. I'm gonna have to go outside to show you guys the other plants, but it's still cold. It's still 19 degrees and the wind is just a little bit less harsh, but it's still pretty shitty outside until this weekend, and then it's gonna warm up into the 60s, which of course I'll document.
And so before I give you guys the update on how the plants are doing, kind of post-thaw, so to speak, it's been warm for about 2 days now since the blizzard. And there's a serious topic with blizzards, which is your safety. Blizzards can be super dangerous. You know, your power I know people who didn't have power for 4 days, and it was 11 degrees outside. So scary stuff right there. So, you know, making sure you have like buddy heaters or preparedness if you live in a cold climate. Yeah, having comforters and extra food and certainly lots of coffee. Alcohol helps too, if you're of age. And, you know, all of that stuff. In addition to the fact that one of the reasons I don't have, you know, Trachycarpus in the ground yet is because I don't really want to have any artificial heating sources for my plants. Back to the planty things. If you're someone like James Palms, where you have like a giant washi, which is gorgeous, and the power goes out, that washi might be toast. So that's one reason that I don't like to have plants that are, you know, requiring additional artificial heat, not just the sun and protection from wind. Alright guys, so as you can see, it's been a couple days. We've had about 2 days at this point above freezing. And this little needle palm here, if you recall at the beginning of the video, was like basically totally covered, like most of, except like a couple little tiny. So you can see where the snow covered it, it looks perfect. And then kind of these little areas where it was exposed, you can see some pretty minor spotting. As this plant gets more established, that should be not as big of an issue, because needle palms that are established should be hardy well into zone 6, possibly more. I know that with some protection, people are growing needle palms in very northern locations like zone 5. Airflow is obviously really important for plants. The other thing that I didn't really mention while the blizzard was actually happening was all these palms. It's not quite warm enough today, but all these palms are gonna get a nice dose of copper fungicide. And you can kind of see over here, like there's still a lot of snow that's melting. My yard was very wet beforehand, and now it's gonna be even wetter, so I'm really not looking forward to that. But it is heavy, silty clay, and I need to get a lot of compost into the ground here to amend it. You can see right there, kind of, I'm not sure how well actually, but this is my Eucalyptus neglecta, which is still kind of leaning over. It doesn't seem to have taken any damage whatsoever, and it was exposed to those heavy winds for maybe like half of the storm. So it got down to about 9 degrees and constant battering wind with no, you can see to the west there's no protection yet. I'm really impressed with that eucalypt, to say the least. The Pragens viburnum looks good. It's basically the same as it did in the fall. It doesn't look great, but I planted it in fall. It's like these irises I'm gonna have to cut back sooner than I was hoping, because the snow, unless they pop back up, the snow has flattened all those seed stalks. So that is what it is, you know, that's gardening. So one of the little tricks for you guys to kind of moderate storms and wind, but planting a conifer hedge to your western side is going to, all of your harsh elements are going to come from the west. I think that's pretty much true regardless of where you are in the world. So you can see really just the tippy top right there. I got little seedling white spruce, which is the species form of a Black Hills spruce. That one actually is a Black Hills. You can see it. And I planted those to the west. I got little tiny trees because, for one, I don't want my neighbors to think that I don't like them, and I don't, you know, planting big trees right away. But also, too, obviously the little guys are cheap, so I got those from my state Department of Environmental I almost said Department of Environmental Conservation. There's actually 3 more that you can't even see, so I'm curious to see how those guys grow as opposed to the Black Hills, which is a bigger size. Over here, you couldn't see that I was talking about cold frames against the house, but I've got a camellia in here, and the camellia, this is Autumn Spirit, so this plant does not really need to be protected per se, but I really put a cold frame around it more just to keep the rabbits off it. After they girdled my peach tree entirely, you can see that lighter color kind of right there. I don't want to take any chances. I'm actually really surprised too, this oleander is doing very well. I got this for free after one of my garden shows. I'm sure that all of you guys have in the spring a garden show that's going to be like, you know, getting everyone pumped up for the season. Afterwards, you can usually get plants for really cheap. Something to keep in mind, a lot of times with these springtime garden shows, they throw the plants out afterwards. So yeah, save them. And then you can see in here the cannas. I'm not sure how that happened, if a rodent chewed a hole in this or if that was snow load, but this little greenhouse did I'm assuming a pretty good job. But the real important thing obviously is that when the sun is out, it's going to heat it up. I'll mention too the little cordyline spike. This guy here is not faring so well, but this guy here looks okay. I really don't care if these survive. These just, again, another freebie plant that I just stuck in the ground. Here you can see inside the canna cold frame. This one's obviously doing absolutely beautifully, and I have a hunch that I'm going to end up protecting this guy because it's going to do well and I'm going to get attached. So the Autolucan laurel looks like nothing ever happened. It looks perfect, and it even still looks like it has flower buds, which is wild. Southern magnolia still looks really good too. This is the Bracken's Brown Beauty, which is believed to be the most cold hardy variety. I did notice, I don't know if these got chewed off by a squirrel or something, or what happened here, because it's a weird kind of abscission point on some of them. But the leaves, it also could have just been the wind literally ripping them off, because it's only at the very tip of the plant. And you can see this branch here was actually completely bent over. This is also a great opportunity to show the different microclimates and how you can kind of plant to enhance those. As far as removing snow off of plants goes, I definitely would be extremely cautious when you do. But the other thing that's really important to note is when plants are frozen, they're way more brittle. So really it is probably a good thing to get some of the snow off after the fact, just so they have a little less water in their crown, but at the same time just be extremely careful. So this frond here was the one that was sticking out during the storm, and it is discolored, but that tends to happen during the winter because the chlorophyll is dormant. But if you look carefully, I mean, besides some of the little leaflets being broken and ripped, it doesn't really have damage. I mean, some very minor spotting, but it just goes to show that an older plant and a bigger plant is able to take more cold, you know, and with the appropriate plants, is able to take more cold. And then obviously the leaves, this was the one that was sticking out where the aqua blocks were kind of buffering the wind and creating a gabion type thing. You can see that one is a little bit yellower than the ones that were totally buried in snow. I'm also really impressed. I don't know if this is going to stay kind of broken looking like that, but I'm really impressed with how these plants rebound. When you think about what this thing went through, it is absolutely just like crazy that there are palm trees or palms that can handle that. And I'm gonna have to do something about this. Should note too, as you saw with the earlier clips, the Trachycarpus was not outside, none of them. Even some of the, this is a Bulgariaform Trachycarpus, so it should be hardier than your typical Trachycarpus fortunii, but I'm probably not going to test that until it's too big to move around, so you know that'll be and even still it's like Trachycarpus in zone 6. I don't know, the cold hardy varieties are definitely interesting to me, but it's, I don't know, I'm extremely back and forth about Trachycarpus. Let me know what you guys think. And so the thing with Trachycarpus in zone 6 is that I don't really want to put any heat into their protection. Obviously I'm okay with having cold frames to some extent, especially if I can't see them too much out the window, but everywhere I see Trachycarpus being grown outside of basically zone 7B, people have some sort of artificial heat source, which, yeah, I'm not really all about that. I like to grow plants that will, if they need protection, it's from wind rather than protection from temperature. So I'm curious to hear what you guys would have to say about the Trachycarpus in zone 6, particularly the kind of more cold hardy varieties. You'll just have to take my words that there's cast iron plants under there, because yeah. Alright guys, I hope you learned something, or I hope it was at least entertaining, and hopefully, I don't know, I mean, let me know down in the comments if you guys would rather have what you guys experience where you are, or if you would rather deal with the blizzard. If you want to see more content just like this, be sure to smash that subscribe button and tap the bell, not the Strelitzia painting. And if you liked the video, I would appreciate it if you dropped it a big old thumbs up. And on the note of subscribers, it says that 92% of you are unsubscribed to this channel. Like, what's the holdup? It's free. Is it my hat? I mean, see you next week. What's up, Barefoot Nation? Today, we are going to be talking about... not looking at the camera. I'm going to give you guys the update on how... words are tough today. Enunciation. I'm cold, that's why.